This is the Let's Go Win podcast with your host, J.M. Ryerson.
What is happening, you guys? Welcome back to Let's Go Win podcast. I'm excited. This gentleman was a referral to me, and he has a very cool story. Hernani Alves makes the most complex skill in business awesomely simple. Hernani started as a part-time employee and eventually grew to become the president for a $3 billion publicly traded company that was regularly voted as best workplace. Today, he's an author and an international speaker that helps leaders build world-class teams focused on getting results. In his book, Balanced Accountability, 3 Leadership Secrets to Win Hearts and Maximize Performance, Hernani delivers clarity on the case for accountability and the steps organizations and individuals need to take to unleash their potential. Hernani, what is happening, brother? How you doing?
I'm doing great. Such an honor to be here. Such a famous podcast. Looking forward to it.
Well, it is our honor to have you on, brother. And the whole story, I mean, there's got to be a story here. Part-time employee to president of obviously a very large company. Yeah. You got to share a little bit, man. How does that happen?
A lot of successful screw-ups. That's how that happened. It wasn't anticipated, but yeah, no, it's just, I always like to start with my name because you've probably never heard of another Hernani before, right?
That is a new one on me, brother. And I'm just glad to say that I think I pronounced it correctly. So it is the first time I've ever heard it.
Yeah, so English is my second language. I grew up in Africa, Angola, Africa. And there's a lot of Hernanis there. My sister's 14 years older than me. There was this Elvis Presley of Africa. His name was Hernani. She convinced my mom. Unfortunately, I've let my sister down and my mom because I can't sing. So that's how the name came to be. But it's kind of cool. It's if you go to Portugal, it's going to be there. You're going to hear a few more. Brazil, it's more of a Portuguese name.
Yeah, it's interesting, man. Is there a specific meaning behind it? I mean, we talked about it, may as well know. Is there a meaning behind it, or it's just the famous guy, the famous Elvis of Africa?
So I've done the typical where I've Googled it. My mom and my sister just said it was just a cool name. So it's just the singer. But there's actually a country in northern Portugal that's called Hernani, and it's after a king. So I've got a really long Portuguese name. It's 5 different words. So I don't know if I want to bore you with that or not. It's a long one.
Look, man, it's unique. And what's interesting with Portuguese, see, I think of most like Brazilian soccer players, and we're talking like, Pelé, we're talking like Ronaldo. So having 5, is that just they're simplifying it for us soccer fans, or what's happening there?
So when I grew up in 1975, there was a Angolan civil war that broke out. So my family, which was there, kind of upper middle class, they had their own plane, got wiped out. They lost everything. The banks went corrupt, the government corrupt. So we became homeless for about 6 months. And being that I'm Catholic, they baptized me. My sister is my godmother. St. Joseph is my godfather. So I got this unique long name. I'll just say it really quick. It's Hernani de Jesus Cantal Alves. So it's Hernani of Jesus, because they're like, this guy's not going to make it. He's got yellow fever. Let's bless him and wish him the best. But luckily we got out of there. We ended up in Portugal, and I survived. And then we came to the U.S. A few years later. So that's kind of it in a quick little summary. So as you can tell, it's a little different.
Yeah, brother, for sure it's different. And I mean, it sounds like you're a fighter, man. You weren't supposed to still be here. And here you are, thriving, doing well, writing books. So Tell me your story, getting from Portugal over to the States and kind of what that looks like, getting into business.
Yeah, so I'm 3rd generation from Angola. My dad migrated there with nothing, started something, built it, lost it all, took us to the Azore Islands. And keep in mind, he's like 45 now. And then my sister is growing up and she's 18. He left that island 18 because there was nothing to do. It's a small island, 9 miles wide, 27 miles long. You're either going to be fishing or you're going to be, they have really good cheese. So you're going to be milking cows. So at 18, he goes, I'm going to pivot again and I'm going to bring my family to the US at the age of 50. And he starts again. He doesn't even speak the language, but he starts another business. So my tenacity, I'm going to get it done attitude really comes seeing my parents of just pivoting, maximizing their controllables, and then at the end of the day, taking action. So that's something he's always done. So I've always been inspired by that. And that's really helped me in my career.
Yeah, I mean, clearly great people to look up to, and that work ethic and the ability to say, you know what, in the face of adversity, I'm going to reinvent myself. That is pretty remarkable. Well, let's get into it, man. So balanced accountability. I know what the word balance is, and I know what the word accountability is. I don't know if I know what they mean together. So hook me up, man. What is that all about?
So I started off with a part-time company, as you mentioned there. When I was 23, graduated college, started working for a mattress company. So talk about letting my parents down again. They're like, what are you doing with your degree? And started working there. It was just going to be part-time, but I fell in love with the people, fell in love with the culture. And then there was an opportunity that opened up about 6 months into it, a manager position. And it's the tenacity I have, kind of like, I'm just going to apply, even though my manager says it's going to take 5 years before you become a manager. I applied for it, and you're not going to believe this. I got the position, nailed it. So I couldn't believe it. I was a good salesperson. So I think that's what helped. And I remember asking my district manager, I was like, hey, how many people applied for this? Don't you have to let a lot of people down? He goes, no, you're the one that applied. So I got it by default. That's how I ended up getting it. What I didn't know is the store was in Stockton, California. You grew up here, so you kind of know Stockton a little bit. You know, there's a good side of Stockton, there's a bad side. Well, this store was on the bad side, and it was a store that they were going to shut down. They had labeled it as the cemetery store. So they were going to close it. I didn't know this. I was kind of new, but I went there, and in the first 3 months, we pretty much tripled the store's business, and it really brought the store still open to this day. And that was my opportunity. I had that where nobody really wanted it, but I just kind of got it by default. And people go, well, you had more advertising, you had new products. No, it was really the same people in there. We just had a different mentality of how we approached and helped each individual.
Let's talk about that mentality, man, because I do know stocks. I don't know it well, but I know I can imagine some of the area you're in. You didn't have a leg up on anyone in selling mattresses. I promise you, just knowing the area, I'm guessing. So what was it? What was the key to your success to be able to bring it to that level, both in sales? You said you're a good salesperson, but that store is still thriving today. So clearly there's some really tangible like skills that were put in place to get this store to where it's at today.
Absolutely. And that's where the passion comes into the balanced accountability, how to win hearts and maximize performance. Was the staff there, they would see a customer walking through the door and they would go, oh, they're here to waste my time. They're here to haggle. They're not here to buy anything. It was just their mindset. I came in as like, no, that person walked through the door. They've got a problem and it's our job to find a solution for them. And since we're a mattress store, our job is to help them fall in love with sleep again. So that's what we need to do, is focus on the value of sleep. How long have they been sleeping poorly? More have that emphasis. And once you build that value, we just started closing deals, and we did an outstanding job. I mean, it was so awesome. But that's really where I had success, but I extremely failed. 3 months into it, my district manager, the one that hired me, comes in and he goes, Hernani, I'd like to take you to lunch. So I went to lunch, but I could tell it wasn't a celebratory lunch. It was one of those, I've got some news to tell you. I don't want to do it in front of everybody else. And he goes, Hernani, do you know that your team doesn't want to work with you? I go, what? They don't want to work with me? There's no way. We're doing great. Our sales are awesome. They're making more money they've ever made before. They're getting their bonus. He goes, Hernani, do you know your nickname? And I go, my nickname? Being my name's Hernani, you can have some fun with it. My staff called me Her Nazi. They were calling me Her Nazi. I was horrible. I was micromanaging every little thing. I was telling them how to vacuum the store, how to clean the bathrooms, how to talk to customers on the phone. I was just all over them. I was really focused on magnifying the negatives. So that was the best thing he ever gave me, was some tough love. And I had a chance to reflect and then get some feedback from my staff and make some improvements.
Yeah, obviously not a nickname anybody's hoping to have thrust upon them. So how do you repair that relationship and your reputation? How did you repair it, brother? Because clearly you stayed with the company. We know the end of the story is pretty darn good, but it didn't start off great. So how did you repair that?
No, that was It was one of my most valuable lessons that I've gotten was that. So when they told me, of course, being 23, I was cocky. I was like, it wasn't me. It's everybody else. It wasn't me. I mean, come on, those people. And I actually wanted to leave the company. I was so offended by it. Had a couple of days off, and I remember going to my team, and I asked them, okay, I hear I'm not the best leader for you. So tell me, what can I do more of, and what can I do less of? And I remember my assistant manager really starting to let me have it. But the best thing I did as a leader at that point was I listened. I didn't argue. I didn't try to justify. I didn't come up with lame excuses. I just said, I'm sorry. I took the hit. And then I listened. And then after that, I started showing the proof. Like, okay, these are some things you said I was doing. I'm trying to show some proof that I'm not going to micromanage, or I'm not going to be the negative Nelly that I was. I didn't think I was. I thought I was very positive. And then a year later, so grateful, that same group of people that hated me, that didn't want me to work with them, they ended up giving me one of the most awards that I still precious to this day as their best leader award. And then from there, I learned the magic of, giving some people some tough love, but the difference between a leader and a manager. A manager, I was all focused about myself. A leader, I started to lead others and really help them develop to become greater than themselves. Something you do excellent at.
Well, that's pretty remarkable, brother. At 23, to ask for feedback and then have the wherewithal to say, I'm not going to be defensive. I'm just going to take it in and listen. I mean, I can't say that as a 23-year-old I would have done as well as you did. So kudos to you. That's pretty amazing.
Yeah, no, I think that's where I kind of go back to my parents of just dealing with adversity. Take a look at it. What's the situation here? How can you make the problem and make it more successful? And that's kind of what I did, is I just listened to them and provide. And I'm so grateful I did, because that really helped the rest of my career.
I imagine, man. Again, getting great awards to, from that nickname to getting awards, that's a huge turnaround. So let's talk about accountability, because obviously that's not the sexiest word when it comes to business. And so often it actually gets kind of, it has a negative connotation, or certainly not something that everybody's like, yes, let's talk about accountability. So where does that come from, and how can we repair its reputation within the business world?
So true. And accountability is the naughty word. So it's a recent study conducted by the American Management Institute. They interviewed over 5,000 business leaders, executives, entrepreneurs, from people from the Fortune 100 companies. So some really high performing people that went to Harvard and Yale, and they asked them, how is the accountability in your organization? And 97% of them said it doesn't exist, or it's poor, or the only time it happens is when somebody gets in trouble. That's the perception of accountability. So they asked a little bit deeper. So what is it? What do you need? What's holding you back? And most of the answers came back that I've never been trained on it, that no one's really trained me on accountability. They've seen other people, and that's how other leaders, and they've followed that. So once you understand, because a lot of people still do the carrot and the stick mentality, which doesn't work. It's a short-term thing. So that's where balanced accountability came to play, is something I learned throughout my career of one, it starts with, it's a 3P process. So first P is personal accountability. Most important person is you. It starts with you first. So you have to analyze, just like I did when I was in Stockton. I had to take the hit. I had to get some feedback from some very important people in my life, even the ones that said I wasn't doing a good job, but that was some good, tough love. And then the second P is where most people don't put this together with accountability, but it's positive accountability. Most of us tend to magnify the negatives. Well, when you magnify the negatives, you get more negative. If you shift your focus to magnifying the positives, all of a sudden you start celebrating these small wins, and small wins add up to becoming very big wins. And then the last P is performance-based accountability. And this is where most leaders, when they grab my book and they start flipping through it, they want to go straight to performance. We got to get performance. And that gets into just measuring. It talks about visible scoreboards. If we come up with a goal, you got to be able to measure that goal. Are you winning? Are you losing? And that's where the performance comes in. So I work with multiple organizations. There's actually a fourth P. It's not in the book. It was something a client of mine told me that it happens once you do the first 3 Ps. After working with her for 6 months, she goes, the fourth P is peer-to-peer accountability. So you do those first 3, all of a sudden you get peer-to-peer accountability. And that was something, like, as I mentioned, not in the book, but I learned that working with other business organizations. So it's really cool to see that.
That is cool. Now, what made you decide to write the book? Just because it was so profound in your career, you had to share it, or is this something you just always knew that you wanted to write and get it out to the world?
So I left. So our company was Sleep Train. We started, as I mentioned, part-time. We grew to be north of 3,500 stores. Public company. We ended up selling to mattress firm. I stayed on for 3 more years, and then I left. And I didn't want to do anything for 3 years. I was just going to get some family time. I mean, last year on the road, I had over 140 some nights on the road. So I wasn't home much. So I was like, I'm going to be committed. I'm going to be family. And but then I had my vendors start contacting me and go, we want that accountability that Sleep Train had, where, we won multiple workplace award. We had a high performing culture. So it was just it was a great honor. And then I started working with them. I did a talk in San Diego for a group of CEOs, and they go, we want to buy your book. And I was like, I'm a C student. English is my second language. I don't have a book. And it wasn't until I came home and I was telling my family, like, how silly is this? I was told I should write a book about accountability. And my son at 9 years old, when you get the moment of truth, sometimes where your kids like call you out and you're like, okay, I better do something about this. My son goes, Dad, you should take action. Because I always tell him, hey, nothing's going to happen unless you take action, right? So you keep playing video games and you want to be a better soccer player. Well, guess what? You'll be a better video gamer, not a soccer player, until you take action. So he goes, Dad, take action. And my daughter kind of jumped in, and I was like, okay, I'll figure this out. And like I've learned, you surround yourself with great people. My mentor, Dale Carlson, told me, surround yourself with great people, treat them well, make them successful. They're going to make you successful as well. And that's what happened. It took a couple years, and we put the book together, and here it is. So it was just kind of just happened. It's awesome. It's opened up a lot of opportunities.
Yeah, that is the beauty of our kids, man. They can't lie. They're just, they learned. Obviously, you're giving him great advice. Same thing with my book. Honestly, my son is like, hey, Dad, how's the book going? Not good. That day I was committed to doing it. So let's talk about more with accountability, because one of the things you talk about is how can accountability equal love? And most people would say it doesn't.
No.
But when you mention, personal, positive, performance, peer-to-peer, I mean, I could see where we're going here, but talk about how accountability can really equal love.
Yeah. So I learned accountability at an early age of 9. That was my first moment where I can really remember it. So we lived at that point, we came to Turlock, California, and then my dad started another business in Idaho as a dairy farm. And if you ever work on a dairy or a ranch, you just know if you can walk, you're going to help. You got chores. And my chore was to get off the school bus, go relieve my dad in the barn by milking. Well, this one day when I did that, there was 3 cows left. One of them was cow number 1. And it was like a sacred cow on the dairy. She was the very first calf. My dad gave her number 1. And now she had grown up. She had calved herself. And here she's in the barn to give milk. So it was really cool. She was there, but she's never been in the barn. So she was really skittish. I go in there. I finally get her in. Keep in mind, I'm 75 pounds. She's like 1,500 pounds. Well, I finally got her in, and I cleaned her udder, and I tried to put the machine on, and she kicked. And then I kind of tried to put my arm into it, which was foolish. And she got my arm and just like kind of scratched my arm. And I'm like, I was so upset. And I opened up the gate and I let her go. So I didn't milk her. And I had about 10 more minutes of cleaning. And then I get to go inside and have dinner with my mom and so forth. And it was right when I was done, all of a sudden I hear the chain open up, like in the corral behind me. And then I kind of start looking, all of a sudden cow number 1's back in the corral. I'm like, how did that happen? I'm just trying to process it. And then I heard the footsteps, the fee, fi, fo, fum footsteps, really loud. Those were my dad's footsteps. So I knew at that point I was going to get it. And he did. He gave me the biggest spanking of all time. The one I peed my pants, even had a little bloody nose. And I don't want anyone to judge my dad. Now, keep in mind, this is many years ago. This is before timeout. They didn't invent timeout. I mean, some of your listeners, including myself, we probably got a spanking here and there where we deserved it. And that's what I did. I got a pretty severe one. But I started to walk towards the house. I was like, okay, my dad's going to milk her. And I took a couple steps, and he just grabbed me like by the collar, turned me around and go, no, you're going to go finish what you started and do it right this time. Finish what you started and do it right. And I could tell you, I hated my dad for years. For a long time, I was always like, why is he pushing me so much? Why is he doing that? And at the end of the day, he had taught me how to milk her. There's this mechanism you put over their hips, tightens their hips. They can't kick you. I bypassed. I was doing a shortcut. But Later, I learned is why he held me accountable. It wasn't until I started having kids and realizing why I hold my kids accountable, because I want them to become greater than themselves. So I'm pushing them to become greater. And if I just turn my eye or let them get away with it, that's not the right thing, right? Sometimes you got to give them tough love. I do that for my kids because I love my kids. And my dad did that for me, and my mom did that for me, and my siblings held me accountable, and my coaches held me accountable because they loved me. And so that's where I started putting the two together. Is accountability is a foundational skill. And then that's how it equals love. And if you look at your career yourself, super successful, you've got some amazing books. But you look at yourself, was there somebody that maybe held you to a higher standard early on? Maybe a parent, maybe a coach, or maybe a sibling?
There's no doubt about it, brother. My parents, no question about it. And I was raised in Montana, so getting spanked, that wasn't uncommon. And not that it happened a lot, but when it did, there was meaning behind it.
Yeah.
Let's talk about this tough love idea, because these are two very, formidable things that happened in your life, both at a very young age with your father, and then at 23, this tough love conversation. It's so interesting because we don't want to have these conversations so often in the workplace, but the truth is that's probably the best thing you can do for someone.
100%.
Why are we so afraid as a society to have that tough love conversation and just deal with the challenge at hand?
Yeah. There's a lot of fear involved with that. We have a lot of fear. Maybe that person's not going to like me, or I'm going to be that negative Nelly. But a lot of people don't know how to give feedback, nor do they know how to receive feedback. So when you provide feedback as a leader, you focus on the facts. Stick with the facts. You don't get into your opinion of the situation. I had a leader just came to my mind early on. He would apply for positions and not get he was trying to become a district manager and then a GM. He was applying for it, wasn't getting it, but my team wasn't giving him feedback, but they had told me he was too much of a wild card, because sometimes when we had these festivities, he would be the guy that drank too much and he would try to headbutt some people. And he was just one of those loud, rowdy guys. And so everyone was scared to give him a leadership position because of how he conducted himself. And then after about the fourth time of him getting turned down, he finally came to my office. I have an open door policy. And he came and he goes, I can't get positions. I don't know. Maybe I need to leave the company and so forth. And I said, no, I think you probably need to stop drinking at company functions. And so I gave him these 3 examples that he had recently done. And I go, that's what gives you're that guy. And you don't want to be that guy at a party. So we're scared to make you a leader. And then a couple of days later, he is now, and he committed to, he was an alcoholic. So he has been completely sober. He's actually moved up in the company. He's a huge leader, vice president, has a big book of business. And it wasn't until somebody gave him some of that tough love. So I've been very grateful. He wrote me a letter. He gave me permission to share that letter in the book. But sometimes that's where you got to be able to share that with them. Again, I cared about him. I loved the guy deeply, but I needed to give him some tough love. Because that's what I got when someone told me I was a herd Nazi. And that totally changed my career, and I was able to turn things around because I was really an energy vampire back in the day. And so that was so grateful for that.
Well, you said the word energy vampire. So let's talk about it. I mean, how do you deal with those? Because when you're in a workplace, you don't get to necessarily choose who you are surrounded by, but these energy vampires, that's a real thing. How do we address dealing with that in the workplace?
Great. So here I'm talking about accountability, it's love, and I'm kind of raw, positive accountability. Now we're going to energy vampire, right? So, but you have to address those. So I always say, what you permit, you promote. So if you continue to allow them to be an energy vampire, you're pretty much telling them you can continue doing that. And then all of a sudden you have 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 energy vampires that suck up all your energy. You have to address it. It starts with you. So the first thing you do is like, hey, can I give you some tough love? And you just look them in the eye, and you normally nod your head, and you just wait for a reply. When someone asks you that, like for example, if I was to ask you, can I give you some tough love?
Yeah.
You're like, sure.
Yeah.
And then you do it in private, and you do it and you sit down, not across from them, you sit right next to them. And you go, I want to give you some tough love. You are draining the energy out of the team. So I'm going to provide it's not out of me, it's the team, because if they're doing it with me, they're doing it with the entire area. And people don't want to let teams down. And then I provide 3 examples. You did this, you did that, that are factual. And then I pause. 2 things are going to happen. One, they're going to go, oh my gosh, I had no idea. I'm so sorry. And they're just going to take the hit. Or the other one's going to happen. No, that's misled. They're just making it up. I'm like, okay, I'm going to give you a 4th one. Here's the 4th one. And normally by the 4th one, when they get the 4th, like here's another example that's a factual, they're like, oh my gosh, I had no idea. And then that's where they finally take the hit. That's the first P1, personal accountability. And once they've done that, now you've got something you can work with. So I have a huge success rate of working with people that were once extremely loyal to the company. Something happened, they became an energy vampire, is getting them back to becoming loyal. Just like I was an energy vampire. However, after the 4th P, if they still don't have personal accountability, you're probably better off letting them go. You're better off letting them go somewhere else. You tried, and apparently they're not happy working with your organization or with your team. And it's probably best that they move on. But I'd say 8 out of 10 times when I do it, you get the ones that just take the hit. They're like, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. I messed up. And then we could start coming up with a plan to make it better for them.
So in that example, obviously you would be, I guess, at the top of the hierarchy. But when you get to that 4th P, that peer-to-peer accountability, that's where you're saying, look, we're coworkers, we're same level, let's say, but you're acting out. That's okay for me to have that sit down conversation and say, hey, this is coming from a place of love, not ego. Can I give you some feedback, or can I give you some tough love as you said? Is that the idea with the peer-to-peer accountability?
Yeah, the team has to go through, when I do workshops, they have to understand how to receive feedback, because most people don't know how to receive feedback. It's a gift when someone gives you information. But most of us take it as it's our ego, it's getting involved, and we just like, no, that's not true. But if you provide someone tough love, like a peer-to-peer accountability, is you're like, I'm going to give you some tough love. Dude, what you did at the meeting, fact. You got to give them fact. That's sucking the energy out of the team. And we don't even want to work with you anymore, the way you're conducting or the way you're acting. So I want to be on your side. What can I do to help you? And you come across as like, I'm here to help you. Well, that becomes a lot more passionate. You do it in public, they're going to get very defensive. You do it in private, and you start with the tough love. And you get permission. When they give you permission, then you can provide it. But as I can only say is, don't bring your opinions into it, because once you bring your opinions, it becomes a debate, and everybody ends up walking away from it pretty negative.
So you mentioned being able to receive it properly. I think I have a good idea of what that looks like, but I want to make sure, like, okay, you're giving that feedback, you're giving that tough love. What is the best way to receive feedback? Because look, it's readily available. Feedback's everywhere, right?
Yeah.
Some unsolicited, some is where you've got permission and it's okay. But let's talk about receiving that feedback. What does that look like?
It's a great call out. It's a great place to start. Because when someone's giving you feedback, what we tend to do is ignore them. We start thinking about ways to counteract, and it gets very defensive. So the first thing when someone gives you feedback is you look them in the eye and listen to them. This is why we have 2 ears and 1 mouth. You probably heard of that analogy, right? You're supposed to hear twice as much as you speak. And then for you to capture because it's real easy. Just notice you're starting to boil up, your temperature's starting to go up, is ask, tell me more. Tell me more about the situation. So tell me more how I did that. Tell me more, instead of like, what are you talking about? That gets defensive. And then you start listening to it. And it's just like when you get for example, it's Christmas and somebody gives you an ugly sweater. Do you say, oh my gosh, this is the ugliest sweater. Here, take it back. I don't want it. No, you receive it and you say, thank you for it. Now, here's what you have to do as a leader is you have to process that. If this is the first time you've heard it, something you may want to be aware of. But if they keep telling you have a problem, or it's like this person has said the same thing. It's like the common denominator. Well, you're the common denominator. You then need to take action. Either you could go read a book, or you can go talk to your mentor, talk to somebody else to give you some advice on ways that you can make some improvements there. And many times the person there that's giving you the tough love is like, what can I do differently? What would you like to see? Or what would you like me to do? My favorite is, what can I do more of? What can I do less of? And it's amazing how people that gave you negative feedback will be there to support you. They're there to guide you. So that's where that peer-to-peer accountability really connects. And the word love, some people, immature leaders will go, well, that's romantic. No, I'm not talking about romantic love. That's what's going to get you in trouble. I'm talking about the love of humanity, the love to serve other people, the love to help individuals. So that's the love I'm talking about.
Earlier, you had mentioned a mentor, Dale, I believe you said his name was, and that word mentor specifically, what was it about that relationship that meant so much to you? What did you learn along that way? Because clearly, again, you guys grew from, you mentioned the one store to, I think you said 3,500 plus stores, my goodness. But this mentor obviously meant enough to you to say, you're recognizing who he is. What was that relationship, and how can more people find that? Because I think it's one of those keys to anyone you talk to that's been successful is they've had great mentors along the way.
100%. You need someone to check your blind spots. And so it's so important. So Dale was the founder of Sleep Train. So he grew up the company, and Dale's actually the one that wrote the foreword to the book. And it's, you get a chance to read it. It's short, but it talks about how I made him red in the face. He's kind of Danish. So I would sometimes get him so fired up that he would tell me what he thought of me. But we had this like very constructive. I would give him feedback. Sometimes it wasn't what he wanted to hear. He would give me some constructive feedback back, but he would always guide me. Anytime I needed some help, even when it came a few times where it was personal, I needed some personal help. There's some personal things that were affecting me. I'm like, hey, I need some advice here. What would you think? Because there's always a solution to every problem. You just sometimes got to talk to different people and get that. And he gave me some good feedback, heart to heart. To this day, that same founder, we're partners in other businesses. Once a year, we go golfing on a golf trip together somewhere in the US or international. We became a really tight bond, but we were able to debate and have some of that tough love conversation. He had that for me. I had it for him. I remember when he was leaving the company because we had sold, I go, the team needs you more than ever, and you're just disappearing. I was able to tell him that. And he stayed on for a little bit longer. That was kind of a private conversation we had. He stayed on a little longer, but then it was time for him to move on. And that's where I ended up moving into becoming president of the company. So that's, but I have multiple mentors. So I've got my wife's a mentor of mine. My dad's a mentor. I've got my sister. She's my oldest, definitely a mentor. So I've got a variety of people. I do not have all the answers. That's where I love to get feedback.
Well, and you mentioned another business that you're doing with him. And I know enough about him to think maybe it's the one I'm thinking of, but do you mind sharing with us what that is that you guys are working on? Because I know Dale does some pretty cool work with helping those that are in need. So am I in the right area that you're working with him on it?
Yeah. So one of them, so Ticket to Dream Foundation. So he's a CEO of the Ticket to Dream Foundation. And what they do is they help foster kids, and they help throughout the entire US. So my book, Chapter 18, when you read it, the very final chapter talks about the accountability of giving back. And I'm very passionate about giving back to foster kids, but it doesn't have to be foster kids. It can be anything that you're passionate about. It could be the SPCA. It could be something with autism. It could be pancreatic cancer. You just got to find what that purpose is for you and go all in. And what I learned is if you're doing a multiple variety of different things, you're really not making a difference. But when you go all in on one cause, you really start making some improvements and helping other people. So I am a big fan of that. He is the CEO of that. So I do help with that. But we've got some other personal, like we're in the car wash business. We have a bar that we kind of went into in San Diego. So we do some little things like that. But we like to get together, have fun. But we're also mentors. So startup companies and different things. We meet with them and we give them some non-solicit or feedback. Normally they want feedback that we don't charge them for. We're just trying to help them become a better startup, things that we learned early on in our careers.
Wow, it's amazing. I mean, clearly you're paying it forward. You're helping others out, and it's remarkable. That Ticket to Dream is what I've heard about. I think it's amazing. It's certainly something that we want to get behind. Let me ask you this. Throughout your career, although you obviously, after that first experience, you continued to grow and succeed, but I have to imagine in sales, we deal with failure. Did you have a specific process, or was it going back to like your dad's optimism where got knocked down, going to get back up? Was that the general idea, or do you have your own process of really overcoming failure?
Yeah. So another one of my mentors, his name is Matt Anderson. He was actually a peer of mine. I worked with him for years. We always talked about successful screw ups. And so our job was to fail fast quickly. So we'd come up with something, or like, okay, for us to be successful, we need to fail fast so we can learn, because there's just things you don't know until you know. So our job was, okay, fail fast. That's our goal. We just want to get in there. Let's do what we can. We're not going to, when we first did it, we would take so long to roll something out because we were trying to be so perfect, and it would take us months, a year. Then we're like, let's just roll it out, throw it out there. Let's get some feedback, make some improvements, get some feedback, make some improvements. And so that's the first thing, is fail fast, and then debrief, learn from it, get feedback from a variety of people, including your internal customer, which is going to be people that you work with, your peers, your employees, and so forth. And then your external, get some feedback, and then roll it out again with those improvements. So that's where some people are scared to fail. They're like, I don't want to fail. But for me, I kind of look forward to it. Okay, fail fast. The faster I fail, the faster I'm going to be able to succeed. So.
Oh, it's true. It is a funny thing that people don't like that feeling, but the truth is that's how you grow. That's how you get better. So I love that. Brother, I being an author at this point, and I have to imagine you've read some pretty impactful books. It's one of my favorite questions to ask is, do you have 2 or 3 most impactful books that really shaped your thinking, both in business and in life?
Yeah, so the one simple one, I always tell every leader that's getting into it, very simple. It's by Ken Blanchard, another one of my amazing mentors. He wrote a book called Whale Done, WHALE Done. So that was one that really hit home for me, of the power of magnifying the positives. And because I was that negative person, I was that, they call it a Seagull Manager, where you kind of fly around, you see a problem or something happen, you get in there, you ruffle everybody's feather, and you poop on the way out type of thing. That was kind of that Seagull Manager. I was that. That's what I did. That was where I got the nickname, and I wasn't proud of it. And it was really once I shifted my focus to start celebrating these small wins, because at the time, all I wanted to do was, okay, we have this big goal at the end of the year. We got to hit that big goal. We're not going to celebrate until we get that big goal. Wrong. You got to celebrate all these wins that you're getting there, and you're going to have some failures. You're going to take a step back, but then you debrief and you continue going. So that's a powerful one for me. I love Patrick Lencioni, The Advantage. That was one that I really started understanding culture and the power of culture. So the other one I'm reading right now, I forget I just started. It's about egos. So that's one that I really wanted, the difference between passion and purpose, and which one's more powerful, somebody that's very purpose driven or somebody that has a lot of passion. And that was something I always had a lot of passion, but really at the end of the day, the one that has purpose driven is the one that's going to be long-term more successful.
I'm so glad I asked that question, because I've never heard of a Seagull Manager. But
there you go. I know. And you probably have some of your listeners going, oh, I either know somebody or I am that person. I was both. I knew somebody, but I was also the Seagull.
Picked on it, ruffled feathers, and then pooped on the way out. That's hilarious, brother. We're going to keep that one.
And I'm a parent. So sometimes I catch myself as a dad doing that with my family, where I'm like, okay, what's the situation going? I go in there, blah, 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 blah. And then I come out and I'm like, I just Seagull. I just pooped on it. That wasn't helpful. So that's where I sometimes got to take the hit. And so
yeah, clearly,
it also happens in personal life.
It's self-awareness, right? I mean, we have to remind ourselves continuously that it's not just in work, but in personal life as well.
Yeah.
Let me ask you this, Hernani, because I don't know you well enough to know that I asked everything you wanted to have on the show. So is there anything you want to make sure that you share with the audience before we end up?
No, I think we're right on. So I always leave with my last quote of one of my favorite by Abraham Lincoln. The best way to predict the future is to go out and create it. So we are able to create it. But I'm so blessed to be able to connect with you, with Taro and Koki. And so, you changed his life, your book, being able to make some improvements in self-awareness that he did. So such an honor. And so I'm so privileged to get to know you better.
Well, you as well, brother. And I hope when I get back to Sacramento, I actually fly there on Saturday.
Awesome.
This will have dropped later, but I definitely plan on connecting and meeting you personally.
Yeah, let's do it.
Speaking of connecting, how can our listeners, is there a place for them to connect with you online, find the book, make sure that they can really get to know more who Hernani is?
Yeah, so the book's sold everywhere. So anywhere you buy a book, Walmart, Target, Amazon. So it's called Balanced Accountability. If you want to look me up you can use my name, most people don't know how to spell my name. So I always use the other one. It's called Balanced IQ. That's my leadership company. So balanced, ED at the end, IQ.com.
Well, Hernani, I appreciate it, man. Great job with the book. Congratulations. You've done an amazing job in your own personal life and your professional life, and now you're affecting others in a positive way. I think it's amazing. So thank you for showing up the way you do in this world.
No, my pleasure. You're keep doing what you're doing. You are improving so many lives, one relationship at a time. So great job.
I appreciate it, man. I really do. All right, you guys, I mean, my pen ran out. And so I'm writing. It's funny if you guys could see this. I am writing so I can see my notes later. I have to go over and scribble over it again. So that's how many nuggets Hernani gave us, is I ran out of ink with my darn pen.
Wow.
Until next week, you guys continue to transcend in life. We'll talk to you then. Thank you so much for listening. If this content is delivering value to you, please make sure to subscribe, rate, and review us. That helps us build this community, and that is what we are all about. Building this community as big as we can, helping as many people as we can, and deliver as much value as possible. Be sure to head over to letsgowinpodcast.com for information on my coaching courses, and make sure to follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn at Let's Go Win 365. Let's go win and transcend in life.
This is the Let's Go Win podcast with your host, J.M. Ryerson.